What story are you telling? Whether you're intentional about it or not, you have an audience and they think in story. The Doug Thompson podcast features diverse storytellers sharing their practical tips for telling the story they need others to envision and trust in order to take a new action. Here's your host, Doug Thompson.
This episode of the Doug Thompson podcast was recorded from a live stream. The interview is here in its entirety. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Doug what the hell's my name today? The Doug Thompson podcast. You think it'd be easy. It's my name. I am Doug Thompson, although you would not believe it by the way I'm speaking. And with me today, I am honored to have Richard Lowe. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, great. Thanks a lot. And I see you're in the Friday Hawaiian attire. And from what you tell me, you've got a few of these things too. So that's scary.
I've got 15 Hawaiian shirts. They're all equally brighter, and some of them have dragons on them.
Oh, I've never seen a dragon Hawaiian shirt. That's interesting.
Yep.
My daughter went through my closet many years ago and started tossing out clothes and shirts and stuff. And I claimed one Hawaiian shirt. I used this is the Hawaiian shirt exclusion. Then she snuck in and threw it out later. So I don't own any of those anymore, but so what is your day job? You know, you were like the king. Explain all that. What's a ghostwriter?
Well, a ghostwriter is somebody who writes a book or article or whatever for you. I mean, ghostwriters write Hallmark cards, they write books, they write articles, they write just about any poems. Apparently, they write raps and music too. So you hire somebody to write for you, just like you hire a contractor to build your house.
Well, I mean, so you're just a writer, but it's usually done for somebody else, so it's under like their name or something.
They publish it under their name. My name up to this point has not been on the cover, although I've got one coming up that will be. And that's the way it is.
Well, a lot of people have a problem with somebody else taking credit for their work. How do you answer that question?
$1 a word. That's how I answer the question.
I like that. So they're not really taking credit; they're paying you for it. So that's not a bad thing.
That's my compensation.
Well, so you've written a lot of, is it one specific theme or area that you write in, or is it sort of many different areas?
Usually I write books for CEOs, CFOs, or high-level managers who want to brand themselves. So they're not interested in selling the book so much as using the book as a tool to market their business or their personality or something. That's my probably 70%. So they're not interested in selling the book on Amazon, other than if they're happy if they do. Mm-hmm. The other 30% is people who want to sell their book, and that's their purpose. And those are usually fiction or something they feel very strongly about and want to write a book about.
So with the CEO, is I suppose it's across different industries and things.
Yeah, I've done everything from a dental office to to artificial intelligence, kind of a wide variety of stuff. And so far it's been fine.
How do you, if you don't know something about the area, I mean, nobody can know everything about the areas and stuff. What's the process that you sort of go in when you're doing the research and stuff? Because you have to have enough knowledge and stuff about it to make the person that the story that you're writing plausible, accurate. Nobody wants to have a book that's filled with holes. Something because it didn't understand, like AI. That's a big, wide topic, and it's constantly changing. How do you sort of do that little research and stuff on that?
Well, first of all, I interview them. So they're the subject matter expert. I'm the writer. And second of all, I have a large tech background. So I was in tech for 33 years. So I'm not an amateur at that. Third, I can interview other people. And sometimes that happens. I'll interview I think one project we interviewed up to 10 different people for the book. And of course there's Google and DuckDuckGo and all the other sources. And even the library. I haven't used the library yet, but it's there. So I do all of that stuff.
So in the interview process on that, like how long does that take? What type of question? How do you sort of get in that mindset?
Well, your typical 60,000 word book, which is about 300 pages, will take about anywhere from 6 to 12 months to write. So each month we allocate 2 or 3 interviews per week at the beginning. It usually slips off to about 1 interview as we go forward because I start to know the subject better. So I interview them a lot and get the information from them, find out what their subject is. At first, we're looking for what's the viewpoint, do you want it humorous, do you want it not humorous? So how do you want it written? And the style and so forth. Sometimes we go back and forth. I'll write a few pages and they'll take a look at it and go, I don't like the style. And then we'll come back and forth about 3 or 4 times until, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then when I'm interviewing them, if I know the technology, then like AI, I've written 4 AI books so far, then I mostly focus on getting stories from them. And if I don't know the technology, then I have to get the technology from them too. But I'm more focused on getting stories. I want to know the personal stories that make the book theirs. I'm the writer. They're the person who is actually the author of the book. I'm just the writer.
So you're the storyteller. You're the true storyteller here. And do you find that a lot of your clients, that's sort of the skill that they're missing in this is the ability to sort of put a story together? I know sometimes it's time. I don't have time to do this because I'm leading this gazillion-dollar company or something, but do you find that they just sort of they have trouble conceptualizing how a good story is put together?
It's actually a combination of they don't have the time. That's the largest reason, and they don't know how to write at all, and they don't know how to put a story together to make it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The make it interesting part is the big part. They can certainly write, almost always can write something because they're they don't get to that level without knowing how to write a memo or something, but that's not interesting to your average audience. So how do you make it interesting?
Mm-hmm.
You put in personal stories and you put in anecdotes and all kinds of other things to spice it up.
Mm-hmm. Do the stories that they tell you sort of help when you're interviewing, getting the stories and stuff? Is that sort of how you get what their voice would be when you're writing to do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I interview them and I listen to them. So if they've got an accent or if they're from a different culture, then I try and capture that a little bit. So then I start questioning them on the culture. If I have I have a lot of apparently Indian people from India like to write books a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They've come over to the States fairly recently and they want to create a career. So I get a lot of Indian clients.
Uh-huh.
So I have to get the Indian viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The toughest book that I wrote was actually the first one. It's a memoir, and I only got paid $1,000 for it. I was a subcontractor for another ghostwriter. It's my very first one, and he was an Afghani politician, Muslim. Didn't know anything about the Muslim religion. I didn't know anything about Afghanistan other than what I read in the newspaper. I didn't know anything about the politics of Afghanistan. This was before the Soviets invaded, so it was in the 70s. Man, was that a learning curve. And he barely spoke English, so it was tough. And we had to finish the interviews fast because he was going back to Afghanistan. We never did finish that book. He just lost interest, but it was a tough learning curve. He had one of the more fun stories that I've ever, or interesting stories. I won't say fun. It's probably not fun to be almost executed in Afghanistan, but interesting to write. And I wish I'd finished it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that really gives you a different perspective when you look at, when I've traveled and one of the books that I read at a previous company, they gave us is kiss, bow, or shake hands. So it was very much a cultural type thing. So the very first thing we had to learn is don't offend anybody by, like in Japan, sticking your chopsticks down and
right.
stuff like that, or taking a business card and putting it in your back pocket. But it does give you an appreciation, I think, for me, it gives me an appreciation of how big the world actually is and how narrow my viewpoint and experience can be.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point in time, my nature is to, okay, let me explore this a little bit, which it sounds like when you were learning about a different religion, I did a college class about religions of the world, which gave me a little bit different perspective as well. So then I think that helps make you richer or better, or able to sort of relate to that, especially if that's probably going to be their audience. Is that?
Yeah. I actually love talking to people of different cultures or different backgrounds, different ethnicities than me, because I learn something every time. One of my clients was a chief diversity officer, so that was very interesting talking to her about diversity and the approach that she was taking, which is different than the normal approach. And I enjoyed writing that a lot, her books and articles.
Yeah, that actually brings in another angle of that too, is now writing from the perspective of a woman or something. You know, I know when I talk to my wife, it's like we're speaking two different languages half the time.
Yes. I know that feeling.
Yeah. How do you cross that chasm? How do you get it to where I know you're talking with your client or whatever, but that seems like that's a real big bridge to cross.
Well, there's a little interesting story behind there. I'll give you the nutshell version. When my wife passed away 15 years ago, I decided to become a photographer. And I wound up photographing models and supermodels and dancers and things, and they're all women, 1,500 women. So basically, when the models and dancers and things were getting ready for the photo shoot, I'd sit there for an hour while they're putting on their makeup and stuff, or 2 or 3 or 5, and talk to them. And I learned a lot about women and what they hate about men and stuff like that. And and I really got the feminine viewpoint from different viewpoints, different feminine viewpoints. There's not just one. And,
right.
And it was very interesting. And I learned a lot. And I really try and understand the viewpoint of the person before I talk to them. I don't care whether they're a woman or an alien from another planet. I can interview them and find out what their viewpoint is.
Yeah, that's a special skill in that listening. And I suppose the more people that you're interviewing over time, you can hone your questions. You know which ones will sort of get you to the piece of knowledge you need to fill in.
Right.
I mean, and it's in sales, which I've been in for a bit. It's all about asking those right questions and learning, but some of it has to be from previous experience that, hey.
Yep. Yeah. And it is fascinating. Somebody in a totally different culture. I also do LinkedIn profile optimizations, and those are all over the planet. I've done them from Chinese and Singapore and Tajikistan. How many people have even heard of that country in the United States? And all over the place, different time zones, very different cultures. And I learned a lot at the beginning because I'd write some stuff in their profile and they'd say that was culturally inappropriate. I'm like, how would I know? So I'd get corrected on that. And it was interesting. I learned a lot there too.
It is, you talked about being a photographer and doing that. And I think the pictures that are behind you, we won't talk about the butterflies, but the things that are behind you, you said they were pins from the Rose Parade?
Yeah, I was a photographer for the Rose Parade. Well, actually, I didn't work for the Rose Parade. Trader Joe's had a float in it, and I worked for Trader Joe's. I was a photographer for them, photographing all the floats, and they gave me, as a thank you, the pin collection for each year. Each one of those is a year's worth of pins of all the floats.
Wow, did they give you $2 Chuck to go along with that?
Well, I don't drink, so they didn't.
I've been to Trader Joe's at that, and the cranberry nut mix is like my favorite. Or cookie butter. So those are all great.
It's quite a company.
How did you get? So you got into ghostwriting here. You said you started in tech and you'd done that. Did you write when you were in technology in your previous role?
My first book was of my grandfather's journal. I took his journal and wrote it into a book when I was 17 years old. He was a POW. He did the Bataan Death March in World War II, which was 10,000 soldiers were captured and had to march across Bataan. Most of them didn't survive. And he spent 4 years in a POW camp in World War II in Japan. So I took his journal and I made it into a real book. Of course, looking at it now, it's like, oh my God, that's horrible. But my writing. But and since then, I've written a few books for myself and tech books because nobody in tech likes to write at all. So I was one of the weirdos who liked to write, but I never really wrote anything for publication. And then it just came time in 2013 when I decided to move on. And I decided I was tired of working for another company and I was going to jump off the cliff, and I had some savings and start my own business. And I had no idea what business I was going to start. I just said, I'm done with this, and walked out. I mean, I gave notice and stuff, but I was done. And I started my own company. And sold on eBay, made 35 grand on eBay, but realized how much work that is to make 35 grand on eBay and sitting, shipping and packing it. Oh God.
Yeah.
And then sold affiliate marketing stuff, and then realized affiliate marketing is a little scummy, and decided not to do that, and a bunch of other things. And then got into ghostwriting, and once I got moved on from the ghostwriter I worked as a subcontractor for, I got some big contracts, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 contracts. And I realized it takes just as much work to get a $100 contract as it does to get a $15,000 contract. So I don't go after the $100 contracts.
Yeah. Sometimes the cost of doing business is too much and it's not worth it. And
I mean, if one falls on my lap, yeah, I'll work on it maybe, but I'm at the point now where I can be a little bit careful about what I take. I only work with good customers who work well, who have good attitude and so forth. In fact, at the beginning of the year, I had a potential client come, and you know how those alarm bells go off in the back of your head?
Yeah.
Well, they were going strong, and it was a $200,000 project. I mean, it's a big one.
Yeah.
And my alarm bells just sounded and sounded and sounded. And I thought, every time I haven't listened to those alarm bells, I've suffered. Yeah. And I turned him down. And I'm in the position where, it felt weird turning down $200,000. But it was the right decision. And I could do that. I didn't have to say, oh my God, I need to make the money for the rent. So I've come quite a ways in a few years, and I was happy with that.
It's amazing when you don't have to worry about, putting food on the table and stuff to make that. You can make the right decision when the alarm bell, like I said, I've had that little voice too that says, like I've taken a role, which I thought was pretty good, but then saying, no, it's not the right thing to do. So I've done it. So how many projects do you have going on at a time generally? Is it more than one? Because you talk about maybe a year to go on. So how?
You just segued exactly where I wanted you to segue, which is the key to being able to turn clients down is you have lots of clients. Mm-hmm. So I have at least 7 or 8 clients going at a time, and we're talking $10,000 books or up. Mm-hmm. So if one goes away, it's like, that hurt a little bit, but I can move on. But if you have only 1 or 2 clients, then you're like pushing it. Yeah. So it becomes a lot easier to find clients or to turn down clients or to be picky when you have multiple clients, and you don't have to worry so much because they do leave. Yeah. Sometimes they run out of money. The pandemic hits. They didn't like the way the book turned out. They didn't like me, whatever. Yeah. They decide to move on, and you have to be ready for that.
So when you're writing, you got how do you shift that mindset to go like you're writing this thing on tech and now you're writing something on a politics or something? How do you? Because I'm very single track mind when I'm doing something. It's very hard for me to keep 2 balls in the air at the same time.
It's worse than that. I'm writing something on tech, then I'm writing something on politics, then I'm writing a kid's book, then I'm writing a young adult book, then I'm going and writing a dentist book, all in the same day.
Yeah. How do you make that shift?
I allocate blocks of time throughout the day, and I take a break, go for a walk, come back, new mindset, get started, and work on it.
Do you ever have little idea? Oh, yeah, I can go. As you're talking about, let's say the kids, but I got a big idea about this AI. Do you ever have those streams where they just sort of come in and get you off track?
Of course, that happens sometimes, but usually, when I'm on one particular one, I'm focused. So it's not really multitasking because that's where you're switching back and forth while you're working. It's more of just blocking out my day and saying, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours on the children's book and 2 hours on the AI book.
So it's a task switching, not a multitasking. So
multitasking does not work. It tends to drive you nuts and leads to stress, at least in my experience. Yeah. But switching works very well.
Yeah. I've heard that. I have the shiny object syndrome, squirrel, sometimes, and that sort of it's very I haven't disciplined myself enough to. How do I do that?
I had to remove myself from all social media because of that, except for the ones that I use for business, which is mostly LinkedIn, and I use Facebook Messenger, and that's about it. Because man, you get sucked into a Twitter communication, you've lost half the day, or TikTok or one of the other things, God forbid.
Yeah, there's a TED talk I like, and it was the inside the mind of a master procrastinator, and he uses one example. He decided to go to the instant gratification monkey, he calls it, decided to go find the end of the internet.
I've seen that TED Talk. It's hilarious.
That's,
And it's me, you know?
yeah, it is. I have that instant gratification monkey too. So it's on my, Tim Urban does it. It's on my LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
When I go watch it every now and then when I've got that, I feel the monkey coming on.
Right.
So in this process of, and I'm sure you take some gratification off, and a lot of times it's I'm the speaker, here's my book, sort of thing. I think you mentioned that before. It's sort of a business card, if you will. I'm going to be speaking, keynote something. Here's my book, buy it or not. But how do you, those that have gone on that you've had commercial success, do you sort of like sit back and smile and just,
Yeah. One of the very first projects I got is probably the 5th or 6th. The book actually, his goal was to get noticed by the CEO. He was in a Fortune 50 company, but one of the lower divisions.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to get noticed by the CEO. Not only to get noticed by the CEO wrote the foreword to the book.
Nice.
It wound up being a textbook in some of the course rooms it was in France. And that was interesting, writing across the pond and to somebody who wasn't a native English speaker. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And it sold quite a few thousand copies. And another book of mine has been traditionally published, and it sold about 50,000 copies. It doesn't have my name on it, of course, but my own books have sold, been bestsellers too. I've had 2 bestsellers. One sold about 15,000 copies, and the other about 7,000. So they're Kindle bestsellers.
Yeah. Well, I think, I still like a physical book, although I carry so much crap from my laptop and stuff around. It's really hard to do that. So the Kindle book, although I struggle if it's something I know I'm going to be highlighting a lot and taking notes and things I'm using for reference, whether it be for, storytelling, how do things I do that, then I find the physical book is easier to do. But the Kindle is it's from an ease of use to have it with you if you just want to read it, and that's sort of the way everybody does it.
Exactly. I have a Kindle and it probably has 400 or 500 books on it, but I got physical books. You can see them behind me. I've got an entire room in a 3-bedroom place that's just books. And it's just because I go in there when I get stressed and just look around and go, I'm comfortable now.
Yeah.
Something your viewers might find interesting, or your listeners. My first job was for a liquor store when I was 17, and my boss was a World War II German Nazi U-boat commander. And it was interesting working for him, the Nazi part aside, in that he was very strict. And I noticed, I was with him for 2 years, and I noticed that I was the only one who lasted. And I asked him why. And he said, because you're competent. And the people who weren't competent left for whatever reason. Most of them got fired quickly because he was very stringent on that. He wanted competence. That didn't mean I always did everything right.
No,
that didn't mean I didn't make mistakes, but I was competent at what I did. And that's the key to survival in a job or especially as a freelancer. You darn well better be competent. And that's followed me through my whole life. The more competent I am, the better I succeed.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting part about competency, and it's not about always being right. It is, when you are wrong, and you will, one, it means you're trying something new, usually. So you're growing, you're out there, and 2, you're learning something from it. Right. And I think that's what a competent person does. And that probably was the frame of reference he had.
Yeah, I knew when to ask something if I didn't know it. How do I do this? I knew when I needed to get education through my career. So I need to go to school to learn this stuff, but I don't know it. And the worst bosses I had were the ones that didn't understand that failure is okay. Failure is going to happen. It always does. You're going to fail.
Yeah.
I'm sure even Bill Gates has failed, even though he's a multi-billionaire. And,
I worked for the company for a while. Yeah, there were some failures in there, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, no, probably best not to.
So you mentioned the photography piece of this, that you did that for a while. Did that overlap the writing? Was this after you decided to jump ship and you did photography then writing, or was there some coexistence?
No, the photography came first. I did that for about 9 years. It was very interesting doing the photography. I met a lot of dancers and models and things. I didn't really charge for it because they're usually broke, but they gave me front row center seats and things like that. And every year I had a birthday party for 8 years with about 150 very good-looking dancers come by, and both men and women dancers.
Yeah.
And they'd come by and they'd dance. I'd rent a hall and they'd dance and put on a show, and we'd have a great time. It was a great party. They had a lot of fun.
Cool.
Dress
Yeah.
up. The dress up room always looked like a glitter bomb went off. So that was kind of fun. I mean, how many people can claim that, right?
I can't, they'd probably count them on one hand if you had that many. So what did the photography, and I've asked people this because I had a guest on last season that her dad was a photographer, and that's the way he told stories was, because you want a picture to tell a story when I've talked to people. How did that help, or did it help you sort of transfer into the writing piece of it, or did that help you discover the writing piece of it?
Well, I'll tell you how it helped me is when I've always been kind of introverted. And when the wife passed away, I completely caved in and became a total hermit introvert. I mean, people didn't even know I existed. With the camera, there's something in the way.
Right.
And I could talk to you via the camera. And that's how I was able to talk to all these very, very good looking dancers and models and a couple supermodels too, because I was talking via the camera. And of course, eventually that became not necessary. And then when I went into the writing career, the talking and interviewing and stuff, after photographing 1,500 people and using that technique, it was just easy. So it was overcoming the introversion.
Yeah.
You have to, if you're going to be a freelancer, you have to get out there and you have to talk to people, whatever that means. And you can't depend on throwing out Facebook ads or all these other things, all these automated things or whatever. You have to talk to people to get them to come in. And if you don't talk to people, you're not going to get the business. You're not going to survive. That's probably one of the biggest keys to being a freelancer or a solo entrepreneur. Talking to people, and I'm a painful introvert. I mean, the pandemic was like, great. I don't have to talk to anybody,
Yeah.
I can be a hermit and it's okay,
Yeah. No, it was like you thrived.
Yeah. So my business actually doubled at the start of literally within a week of the start of the pandemic. And I was freaking out because like, oh my God, is my business going to dry up? But it's that you have to communicate. And if you have trouble with that, join Toastmasters or take photography or do something that gets you out there with people and learn to talk and learn to speak and break out of that shell, or you're not going to make it.
Yeah. So I mean, you've had an incredible journey that you said. So if I had to sort of do the hero's arc of that, is you enjoyed writing when you were in the tech field. You did all the other stuff on that, but that was only a part of what you did. Life changed. Wife died. You decided to come out and you said, look, the introversion was going to be a blocker to doing your, to do writing, or maybe you didn't have it, but that helped sort of cross that chasm to now where you can talk without the camera, and then you help give other people's voice. It sort of sounds like that's what the journey is. And you're well on your way to sort of living more of your dream, and being in the moment and actually helping other people along the way.
Yeah, I look at my life as 3 phases. So my first phase was my childhood, as dumb as a brick, up to my 20s.
Started out that way.
then in the midlife, I was growing and being in the tech field, and now I'm in the end part. And this is actually the best part of my life. Believe it or not, I know what I'm doing. I'm competent. I've got the most of the knowledge. I know what I want to do. I found my career that is my passion, but it also makes me income. I'm making a good income. I'm actually making more than I made in the tech field, which is great.
Yeah.
I can be a hermit and not be laughed at.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Mark Metry earlier in the week, and he's a big introvert, and he had to do his stuff. But he had the book about being shy and overcoming that. So I need to connect you two guys for that, because you share a lot. How do you overcome that? But so how do people get a hold of you? So maybe I need a ghostwriter and I don't know it, or how do we get in touch with you?
You can just go to thewritingking.com. It's thewritingking.com and look through the site. I've got a couple hundred articles about all kinds of stuff, mostly ghostwriting and writing. I do ghostwriting and writing coaching. So if you've got a manuscript that you finished, but you're not sure of how good it is, I can help coach you through that.
Cool.
And that's charged by the hour. Ghostwriting is usually charged by the word. And there's a form on there where you can just fill out your contact information. We can get hold of. There's also a form on there to schedule a time if you want to just go directly to that.
Okay.
And that's the best way. You can also go to thewritingking.youcanbook.me and actually book something.
Cool.
And I do LinkedIn profiles, optimizations, and I do ghostwriting of articles and books, and I do writing coaching. Oh, and also you can go to fictionmasterclass.com, and I've got some books about how to write. So how to write a science fiction book, how to write a mystery, and how to write other things. So if you want to, they're cheap. I think they're 10 or 15 bucks each. You can just go there and buy one and read about how to do that.
Well, that's cool. And my one of my coworkers, Moshe, will call me, says you're awesome guest. So I agree fully with that. Thanks for coming on, Richard.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for what you do, because you're actually helping give other people voices, which I try to do through the podcast and talking with people and share great stories. And you have an outstanding story with your journey that you've had. So thanks a lot. And all the links will be in the show notes. And go reach out and get a book written for you.
Yeah. One last site, by the way, is uniquesouls.com.
Unique Souls.
Yeah, and that's where I interviewed writers. There's about 30 writer interviews on there, and they're all video interviews, and they talk about how they succeeded. They're all writers who've actually succeeded.
Wow.
And you can go there and learn how to do it.
Wealth of knowledge. And Glendon, thanks a lot. I'm glad that you got something. So until next time, everybody, thanks. Reach out to Richard. And I've learned a lot about this one as well. And some behind the scenes stories help. Using that camera to sort of hide that shyness.
You betcha. It's it was very good for me.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.